How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is PSReady, my channel all about PlayStation. This video might have a cameo from my mom's dog, Oakley. He's staying with me and he cannot sit still, so I apologize. In today's video, I don't have 3 topics to cover. No. This time we have 4 topics to cover because there's a lot of PlayStation news. The first topic is this is my all-time favorite DualSense, but I'm mad about how much it costs. Second on the list, we now know what the Black Friday deal is going to be for PS5 consoles, and it's pretty decent. Third, we're going to talk about how it's basically proven that PS5 exclusivity does not hurt game sales. And fourth, we got to talk about this situation where people are criticizing Sony for trying to buy exclusivity, but I think it's a good thing and it should happen more. All right, let's jump into it and talk about this DualSense because this thing got me really excited. It's GameCube themed, which is weird because the PlayStation is the DualSense and GameCube is Nintendo. But if you were someone like me growing up, you always had one, edgier console like the Xbox or the PS2, and then you also had a Nintendo console, whether it was the GameCube, the DS, the Game Boy Advance. The Game Boy Advance was cooking. That was my favorite. But yeah, if you had one of those consoles, you probably had a Nintendo console as well. We had the GameCube in my house because my brother got that the year the Xbox came out. I got the Xbox and then I bought a PS2 off my friend, so I had everything, which was awesome. But my favorite game of all time, if you haven't watched the channel before, is Resident Evil 4. I played that on the GameCube, and between the two versions, the GameCube version was the best. It had less content, but it looked and ran better. So yeah, the GameCube version was awesome. Real quick before I jump into the PlayStation news, I gotta tell you about my new channel, Real Ones. If you didn't know, I started YouTube talking about the Halloween franchise specifically, and if you're like, how did he do that? I did over like 250 videos about Halloween. So if you ever see me at a bar and they're doing Halloween trivia, just leave because you're gonna lose. Anyway, my new channel, Real Ones, is something I've been cooking up for like a decade because I have a lot of stories about producers, directors, actors, everyone just crammed into my head. It takes up all of my terabytes of knowledge that I can have capacity for. That was a terrible analogy. Back in June, I was talking to my YouTube buddy at a bar and I was like, I really want to make a deep dive movie channel with like heavy editing, heavy research, scripts, which I don't use for this channel. And he was like, dude, you just told me this insane story about how Kanye West discovered Fede Alvarez, the guy who directed Alien Romulus. You should make that your channel. And I was like, yeah, dude, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to pass the idea off as my own. And it turned out I already had a bunch of scripts written just like that. So I got to work, I started making these videos, and it has been a ton of fun. I just posted the first video, which is about John Carpenter, the guy who made Halloween, The Thing, The Fog, Prince of Darkness, In the Mouth of Madness, Christine, The Ward. There's even more movies, Escape from New York, Escape from LA, stuff that you've definitely seen. But throughout his entire career, he made like no money. And while he was making no money, he had to watch the first franchise he created, Halloween, become a billion-dollar franchise. And I know this is like as different as you could get from PlayStation news videos, but I know there are a few of you out there who appreciate horror movies and horror directors. So if you're one of those people, or if you're not, you can check out this channel and watch my first video. Anyway, guys, that's my sponsorship of myself. Let's get back into the Steam Deck video. Now, this controller is really interesting for a few reasons. The first one being that despite the fact it's a third-party controller, the internals and I guess the way the outside is made are just like a real official PlayStation controller. So you're going to get all the features of a DualSense, which is great because I've looked at other third-party controllers on the channel that don't retain DualSense features, and I would say that none of them are worth buying. Sony has the controller market locked down for the PlayStation 5. The really cool thing is how far they went with the GameCube inspired design. Of course, you get a purple top plate for the controller, but the bottom plate is a clear translucent look, which I really like. I don't think that's actually from the GameCube. It's kind of like their spin on it, but it still looks GameCube inspired. And then the face buttons are not laid out like the GameCube, thank God, because even though the controller is great for Smash, it's bad for everything else. You do get the colorway though, so the A and B buttons are red and green, and then the X and Y buttons are gray, just like the GameCube controller back in the day, which is awesome. And then they went all out for the right stick. If you didn't know, on the GameCube, the right stick was like a little nub. It was not like a full-size stick. It was yellow. It was called the C stick. And on this controller, the right stick is yellow and a little bit smaller than the right stick would be on a regular DualSense. Now, of course, this is going to cost more money because it's using the internals of a regular DualSense, so they got to pay $70 or $75 now with the price increase to actually get the internals. So because of that, the cost of this thing is $149, but they have multiple editions that honestly seem pretty decent. So if you want to get either of these features, it's $169. And if you want to get both of these features included on top of everything else, it's going to be $180. But what these features are turning the triggers and the bumpers into clickable buttons. I personally wouldn't do that because then, of course, you're losing out on the best feature of the DualSense, which is the adaptive triggers. But the second feature that they're adding in is clicky, like mouse style buttons for the face buttons. That is one that I think is worth paying for because the mushy buttons on the DualSense, they're fine, they get the job done, but if you get like one speck of dust in them, they become sticky, which I don't like, and I just like a clickier controller. I've had a couple in the past, like through Xbox, that I think worked out really well, so it might be worth springing $169 for that version of the controller. Obviously, these were in a lot more demand back before Sony started doing all these special edition colorways. I mean, there are so many at this point. You've got the God of War one, you've got the Fabled Concord one, you've got the Harry Potter one, you've got the black, the pink, the purple, the blue, the cobalt blue, the pearlescent collection, the deep earth collection. There are so many different DualSenses at this point that like the market for custom third-party controllers has definitely diminished, but I still think this is pretty cool and worth talking about. I know the price is going to turn most people off. I mean, if I'm being real, it turned me off. I'm good on DualSenses, especially after pre-ordering the special edition 30th anniversary DualSense Edge, but I figured it was worth highlighting because it seems like they put a lot of work into getting this right, and I feel like it was worth shouting out for the few of you who also had a GameCube growing up and played Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil Remake, and Resident Evil 0 just like I did. Anyway, that brings us to the second news story here, which is that the Black Friday deals have been revealed by Bilbo Kun. I expect these to actually start showing up before Black Friday because they're console bundles. These are PS5 Slim bundles, so there's a different bundle for each version of the console. You know, the disk drive enabled one and the diskless enabled one, or diskless model. I don't really know how to say it. You get what I mean. There's two PS5s, both of them are going to have bundles. Now, what these include is related to Fortnite. I'm assuming that's because Call of Duty is off the table for Sony now going forward since Xbox owns Call of Duty, so we're not getting a Black Ops 6 bundle this year. And what you get in addition to your console is 8 exclusive skins. I'm assuming they won't be licensed skins. I'm assuming they'll be like the first party to Fortnite skins, just with different colorways. And then you get 1,000 V-Bucks, which I guess is still enough to get a battle pass. I have not played Fortnite in a very long time. The last time I booted it up was when they added Michael Myers to the game, so I could buy him and get a little clip for my other channel, which is called Jimmy Champagne. It's all about Halloween. But yeah, I kind of see the strategy here, right? You can't get the biggest game in the world, so you go for, I guess, the second biggest game in the world. It captures a completely different audience than Call of Duty, but I would still look for the Modern Warfare 3 bundle. Modern Warfare 3, I think, is underrated. I've had so much fun with the multiplayer in that game, and then you'll be ready to go for Black Ops 6 when it launches. Or, you know, you could take the game download code for Modern Warfare 3 and just flip it on eBay or Facebook Marketplace and make a little bit more of your money back. I like the way things work in the PS3 and PS4 generation where these bundles would actually lower the price of the console, so I was always jealous of my brother when they did the PS3 Slim. And they dropped it to $250 on Black Friday, and it included, I'm pretty sure, a couple Uncharted games or something like that. Now, you pay full price for the console, but then they add in a couple of games with it to kind of make it seem like you're getting a discount. I hate this situation we're in right now where they can't discount the PlayStation 5 because of how expensive components are, but, you know, if you're going to buy a PS5, you may as well do it with a bundle. Even if you're not a Fortnite player, you're at least getting a technical discount and a little bit of added value on top of the full $500 or $450 cost of the console. So yeah, that's the Black Friday deals. If they do game deals, which I'm sure they will, I'll do a little video about it, or at least have a segment so I can tell you what to pick up. But yeah, if this is coming from Bilbo Kun, I think it's totally reliable because that guy leaked everything, especially the design of the PS5 Pro. So it just all makes sense. So I don't feel bad talking about a leak. Anyway, that brings us to the third topic here, which is that PlayStation exclusivity is not hurting games. So we've seen this a lot from the Xbox camp on Twitter and YouTube, where they say, oh, it's such a great thing that Square Enix is putting their games on every platform because that means their games will meet their sales expectations. And you guys know, I've been beating the drum since this all started saying that's not the problem. The problem with Square Enix games is that they come out unoptimized. They're going for the wrong audience. Like, you know, with Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth, as much as I love those games because they're action combat, the main audience for Final Fantasy has been conditioned for decades to expect turn-based combat. They like that combat and they'll show up for a good game. And Square Enix, I think, screwed up because because if you look at Persona 3 Reload, Persona 5 Royal, and now Metaphor ReFantazio, it just goes to show that if you make a good game with turn-based combat, you will sell a lot of copies of that game to that audience. They just don't want mediocre stuff coming out anymore. And as we saw with Final Fantasy 16 coming out on PC, it doesn't drive any sales if people don't have interest in the game in the first place. But another game they've been kind of complaining about is Silent Hill 2, but since this game, unlike a lot of the other third-party exclusives, launched on PC and PS5 at the same time, we have verifiable sales data to show how many people bought it on PC and how many people bought it on PlayStation 5. And the results are really good for the PlayStation 5. This is all just going off the UK at first from Christopher Dring over at gamesindustry.biz, but then he followed up with this post to say that US sales data is equivalent to the UK sales data, which is awesome. So 80% of people who bought Silent Hill 2 out of the million or so copies it's already sold bought it on the PlayStation 5. So it just goes to show that PS5 does drive sales numbers, which is a good reason to make your game exclusive to it, but it also shows that if you make a quality game that gets great reviews, that has a lot of hype behind it, people will show up for it. It's not gating your games from the Xbox and Nintendo ecosystems. It's making sure that your game is good and functional when it releases. That's what makes sure people buy your game, because I guarantee you, if the PC port wasn't busted as for Silent Hill 2 at launch, like it's one of the worst PC ports I've experienced in a very long time, it would be probably a little bit more than 12%. I would say it would be more like 20% or maybe even more, but that reviews spread around, right? Like Digital Foundry did a video on the PC port and they were like, it stutters like fucking crazy. It has a lot of major issues and you should not buy it on PC. So people didn't buy it on PC. If they had a PlayStation 5 like I did, I refunded it on PC immediately when I saw how bad it was running, and I bought it on PS5 and I got a much better experience, and now I'm more excited to play it on the PS5 Pro. So yeah, Square Enix, like, I think they just need to reevaluate how they make games and the state they release them in, rather than reevaluating where they release their games, because as we've seen with the few Final Fantasy games they have released on Xbox, people love to port bag on Twitter, but when push comes to shove and they actually put these games on Xbox, these people who have been trained to play their games for free with Game Pass are nowhere to be found, because they've been trained not to buy games, and maybe the audience for Final Fantasy is just not that big on a console made in America, right? Like, it just has to be said. But that kind of leads us right into the fourth news story of this video, which is about the Crimson Desert situation. I gotta be real, I've never heard of this game, and I went to Summer Game Fest. Apparently I saw a trailer there and it was just zapped from my mind, but I did some research and I guess this is like a single player open world RPG that's a spin-off from Black Desert Online, which is a game that's been around for a while. It's an MMO with good action combat, and the big reason I think it caught on when it came out is because the character creator is insane. Like, you can make yourself in the game close to real life, and that made people want to play it. The developers, Pearl Abyss, put out a statement that said Sony approached them to money hat, as the gamers say these days, and actually pay for exclusivity on the game, and they denied it because they want to make sure it's on as many platforms as possible, and people are kind of mad at Sony for this. I'm not mad at Sony. I have a PlayStation 5. I want Sony to buy exclusivity on games, because that means Sony money will go to those games and increase the marketing and increase the development budget, which will ultimately result in a better game. I am completely fine playing games like Rise of the Ronin and Silent Hill 2 on my PlayStation 5 exclusively, because I have a PlayStation 5. Like, I get it that there's people out there who bet on the wrong horse this generation, who wanted to buy an Xbox Series X or S, which is the one that sold way more, and they're a little bit bummed when Sony does this, but like, sorry, I don't know what to tell you. You bought the wrong console. I mean, Sony's been doing this forever, and Xbox is extremely guilty of doing it too when they can. I mean, look at Palworld, right? Like, that's on PS5 now, but Xbox bought exclusivity for the early access period of that game for like 6 months, and no one complained about that. I didn't see any PlayStation people complaining. They just patiently waited, and then when it released on PS5, they showed up and bought it, right? Because PlayStation players actually buy games, unlike Xbox players who just wait for them to come to Game Pass. I just don't want to play this game where I got to be the most like fair guy in the world. Like, this channel is called PSReady. I'm a PlayStation fan. I have liked PlayStation for pretty much my entire life. I have seen better games on PlayStation, and in the cases where third-party exclusives are bought, they always end up better than they probably would have if they didn't get that influx of PlayStation money. I mean, look at Helldivers 2. That's still the biggest PS5 launch of this year. Stellar Blade. That's not a first-party game. That's a second-party game, and it came out really good. Rise of the Ronin, graphically speaking, not great, but but it's still a really cool open world samurai game that I'm excited to play on my PS5 Pro, where it'll actually have 60 FPS. Silent Hill 2, they got Sony money to develop that game, and despite everyone believing Bloober Team sucks, they made a really good remake of one of my favorite survival horror games. So the trends show that when Sony money hats games, they end up better. So I'm not mad about it, and I probably never will be, because at the end of the day, I have a PlayStation 5. So, you know, I'm gonna get to play these games on launch. Not really a problem I have to deal with, you know? I also have a PC, so if something is not exclusive and it runs better on PC, I can walk over to my desk there, spend 60 bucks on Steam, and if the experience sucks like 90% of the PC ports do these days, I hit that refund button and I walk over to my PS5 and I buy the game there, and most of the time it works a lot better. But yeah, guys, that's all I've got for you in today's video. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.